I have been waiting all of my 40 years on this earth just to talk about this, just to talk about how you, Secular Rarity, you, Scott Dickie, and you, Richard Gilliver, and all who happen to share your lack of melanin are being replaced. Yes, you are being replaced, and it is a great replacement. I don't know how great or if it's great or even if it's a replacement, but it is there because people are talking about it. I heard people talking about it in the water, around the water cooler, around the five and dime, around the dollar store, around the discounted Frodo's. Secular Rarity, they've been talking about it. And basically, this, and this is also to bring, some levity to a very serious topic. And I just did that, just to kind of just give some people like a breather to really talk about something very real as far as in the minds of people who actually share this rhetoric. So, um, in earlier in mid-May 2022, there was another mass shooting in the United States. We have plenty. I know it's hard to keep count. I think that we're like since 1999, or no, since in the past 10 years, I think they were close to 2,000. Yeah, let that sink in. But anywho, in Buffalo specifically, there was an area that was targeted by a young person, 18 years of age, who was able to purchase an AR-15 legally, traverse 200 miles away from where he lives to open fire on African Americans, predominantly African Americans, in a predominantly African American neighborhood in Buffalo, New York, at a grocery store. This is on a Saturday when he decided to do this. Most people who were there were just getting their groceries for the week, most likely, and they never got a chance to go home to see their families again. And his whole motive for doing this was in a 180 well thought out, sort of, kind of manifesto that espoused talking points from the Great Replacement Theory. So, what exactly is the Great Replacement Theory? So, we're going to be coming specifically from a few articles in this whole segment. We're going to lead off with the Atlantic article, by Adam Serwer, that was published on May 18th, 2022, that discussed the Buffalo shooter and the Great Replacement Theory. Also, Vox put out an article by Zach Beauchamp called A Neo-Nazi Idea to Spark a Race War Inspired by the Buffalo Killings. And also another article by Rebecca Watson, which is, oh, actually, this is an actual YouTube video, which is very well done. I really encourage people to actually watch it, by Rebecca Watson, also known as the Skeptic, who talks about the very dangerous and very odd action of conservatives that are actually defending and trying to sanitize their version of the Great Replacement Theory. And we have like the Guardian talking about Fox News getting a little bit quiet on the Great Replacement Theory, and last but not least, a survey from Religions News that actually talks about Great Replacement Theory and how it even correlates with Christian nationalist views. So let's get into the whole thing about the Great Replacement Theory and why it's bullshit. So, because it's bullshit. I personally would love to say in this particular segment, the Great Replacement shit that the Great Replacement Theory says. Let me say that again. Shit that the Great Replacement Theory says, because you know that shit Internet Apologist says is like one of my favorite segments on this show. So anyway, in the lead article, giving a summation, in the wake of the shootings in El Paso, Texas, and recently in Buffalo, New York, exactly what is Great Replacement Theory? So, according to the article in Atlantic, The white genocide or Great Replacement conspiracy theory rests on the ideological principle that certain people should be excluded from the American dream, or that extending it to them would constitute a form of bondage for those to whom the promise was originally kept. So, moving on, there's actually two versions that I believe the Vox article talked about of the replacement conspiracy theory. But both of them share the same basic premise. Now, what is that? So, the first version is that the idea of a secret cabal, that's right, people, there's a secret cabal going along. You better pay attention. Matter of fact, I would even pay attention to your pizza boxes. Wink, wink, not, not. And this particular secret cabal is composed of Jews. That's right. Jewish people are composing the secret cabal and is fostering a demographic change in the United States, specifically through immigration, in order to replace its white population. You know, secular Rarity, Scott, Dickie, B, y'all in trouble now. Richard, you across the pond, you just need more faith to actually walk across the pond, but that's okay. But but y'all in trouble specifically. And in order to replace this white population, the motive of mass murders in Pittsburgh and El Paso and now Buffalo is being exacted because of this particular theory. Now, the second one of this particular conspiracy theory is that liberals, them goddamn lefties, Antifa looking asses, are fostering demographic change in the United States through immigration. Oh, yeah, I talked about that. And to replace the white population. And they are both conceived as an American fundamental white and Christian theory. And in so do posit not only a racial conception of citizenship, but a racial hierarchy, and one that must be maintained if America true nature is to endure. That these theories are now embraced by descendants of some of the very European immigrants who Grant considered racially inferior might have shocked, but just shows how arbitrarily and socially this whole particular the categories that actually come with great replacement theory are. So I'm going to go ahead and lean back and let's go ahead and open up to the floor.
Yeah, Cynthia, you were talking about the true nation, right? The true nation, and
Yes.
what we're talking about here is it's like white privilege amped up to the max, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's like the ultimate white privilege, and hidden behind that is this idea of white preservation.
Mhm.
Right, that you said the true nation. So what that implies is that America is really white, and and so when you I mean, because people die and are born and die and are born all the time. Literally, people get replaced all the time. But we're talking about a specific type of replacement, right? We're talking about the secret cabals are taking white people out of rotate. I don't know. Did they say that people were offing these white people, or I don't know. How does the mechanic? I haven't been invited to my replacement theory meeting, in this neighborhood yet, and so I don't know exactly what's going on.
You got to talk to the Jewish. You got to talk to the Jewish cabal, Scott.
But if you think about this, when I see something like this, I try to think of it in terms of, well, what are they gaining from this? I mean, obviously they're catching flack from us liberals that are in on the whole thing, apparently. But if you look at it from the perspective of your Tucker Carlsons, etc., it fits perfectly with their modus operandi, right? We see evidence popping up all the time. There's Jonathan Haidt. He's written some books on this type of thing, and he says that his research found that the more conservative a person rates their own political outlook, they're more likely to consider things like authority, in-group measurement, purity. Okay, and that can also go back on, what we were talking about with the abortion. It's really not the pregnancy that they're concerned about. They want to punish that, that lewd sexual behavior. But
Right.
that's a whole, we'll leave that alone for now. But for here, so if we think about this in terms of racial purity, we think about it in terms of in-group measurement, we think about it in terms of doing what you're told, as compared to the more liberal a person rates themselves, they're more concerned with things like fairness and well-being. And now those aren't necessarily in and of themselves better than worrying. There's ways you can worry about purity. That's a good thing. There's ways that you can worry about in-group measurement or in-group membership and authority in a positive way. But clearly this is a very, very harsh negative way of looking at it. And it's all along, because look at these last few election cycles. There's always been a boogeyman, right? To rally the conservatives to the polls, right? The Muslims are going to come and get you, and the immigrants are coming to get you, and the gays are coming to get you, and now they're going to take their guns, and they're going to take your taxes, and now they're coming to kill your babies, and now they're going to replace you. And so, it's just a fear-based motivation, and it looks, if you're not of a conservative mindset, you're not affected by it as much as you would normally be. And so it, from looking at it from the outside, it looks kind of silly in one way, terrifying in another way, and worrisome in any way, right? They're coming to take your place. What could be more threatening to somebody than knowing that your legacy, your contribution to the world is going to be wiped out? It's kind of like in Last of the Mohicans. This was in the movie. I don't believe it was in the book. But and of course, this is a man of color talking to a white man in the movie. And he's saying, when the gray hair is dead, this is Magua. I don't know if you've seen the movie Last of the Mohicans. He says, when the gray hair is dead, before he dies, I will put his children under the knife, so his seed will be wiped from the earth forever. And so that was like the ultimate existential threat. Not only am I going to make your life difficult, you're just out of here, and we're going to put other stuff in. And so it's just, I don't know if calling it thinly veiled white privilege would be accurate. It's not even veiled at all. It's just like right out there on their sleeve, white privilege. This is clearly, this is my country. You can't take me out of the country and have it be the same. It's the exact opposite of the Schoolhouse. When I was a kid, I don't know if you've watched Schoolhouse Rock. You guys are probably a little too young to have experienced the Schoolhouse Rock.
I watched Schoolhouse Rock.
But they had the Great American Melting Pot, and I loved that one because it showed all these different people coming from all. Now, there are problems with the Great American Melting Pot. It was created in the 60s or whenever it was, and so it's not perfect. But it was all about, coming together, and what we make is what we make together, not as what we make as individuals. And this seems to be like, are we going in reverse now? Is this a measure of how far we've come? Now we're backing up to, to pre-American melting pot days. And
yeah,
I don't know.
I think while so many of these articles that we have are very much focused on, white American Christian type of influences and focuses. Richard, you've got a little bit of kind of a passing glance with this, but in a bit of a different focus. What is that like?
We have this in the UK as well, but the most of the conversations I've had, and this is 30 years of conversations, by the way. This isn't just like 2 minutes ago. Is that there's so much fear against Muslims in this country that they're going to breed us out, that they're going to overtake us and breed us out and instill Sharia law and all this bullshit which is going off. And I have these conversations all the time, and that's what it is. It's fear. People are scared, and they're not scared because there's a genuine threat. They're scared because they don't understand. We all know that there's wrapping yourself tightly in a bubble with those who look and sound exactly like you is far better than education in order to alleviate such fears. There'll be somewhat people watching this or listening if you found the amazing AEN podcast network. Go and check it out. Screaming, "We're not scared." But let's look at what the science says about it.
Please.
Cognitive behavioral therapist Marian Rodriguez said in an article published in Psychology Today, hate of certain ethnic groups, religions, races, or sexual orientations is based on irrational beliefs that lead to hatred of others as well as hate crimes. It is the belief that other groups are inherently flawed or inferior or are seen as a threat. Often these groups are dehumanized and delegitimized, making it easier to hate. A study led by the University of Oxford, published in the Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences journal, suggests that people can be less racist by integrating themselves in ethnically mixed areas. And this is confirmed by neurological data. An article published in the journal Psychological Science implies that people with stronger negative implicit race attitudes may actually perceive black and white faces to look more different. All areas of study seem to point in the same direction. The way to alleviate the fear white supremacists have is to integrate them into a wider ethnic and religious culture. And this is something, as in the ACA, we've seen in another context. The amount of calls we've had to our shows where people have become more tolerant and understood the atheist position because they've been exposed to it is, it's immense. It happens on a weekly basis. The message here, it seems, is simple. So let's bring it back round to the article. News networks shouldn't be echoing white nationalist sentiments. They should be educating people with science. I know that's a dirty word. We've already touched upon that at least a couple of times tonight. And many people find it boring. But as myself and very good friend and fellow ACA host Kenny Lenny say far too often, it all depends whether you care about truth or not. If the news networks aren't echoing the research, in fact, if they're going against it, then should you really be questioning whether they are legitimate sources of good information? That's an open question that each individual has to answer for themselves, I think.
Yeah.
Cynthia,
most definitely.
Do you have
I just wanted to add this real quick, just going back to this whole why this is bullshit. And what you said, Richard, is so appropriate. Knowledge and actually being exposed to different ideas can actually change your mind and make you less shitty. Who'd have thunk? Yeah. But even just going back to why this is a mess. So I wanted to point out that, first off, when we're talking about immigrants specifically in the United States, most of them are coming from Northern Africa and also from Latin American countries or the Middle East. And they're all categorized as racially white. Okay? Like all of them. And then white folks actually still hold the majority of bodies and wealth in the United States. 90% of the wealth of the United States is actually held in white hands, not the other way around. And also they hold most of the government, and they also hold mostly seats in business. Okay. So, and then
there's your motivation right there,
right?
With a bow on it,
with the bow, right? But even with the Buffalo shooters, who actually researched the neighborhood that he went to, it kind of it's interesting, especially since he talked about immigrants, he talked about Jews, he talked about the man in the moon, but he went specifically to a black neighborhood where blacks actually hold less than 13% of the overall population and less than 2% of the wealth in the United States. So I just want to ask him, because he's still alive and he's being arraigned. My dude, who's replacing who?
It is quite literally And in these articles, when you read through them, when you go check out what Vox had, when you go see the video that Skepchick created, you can see the thread that this shitty argument has had throughout history. We can see how it goes all the way back to the 1930s, because this is the second oldest, shittiest play out of the oldest, shittiest book. The first of which being "My God's better than your God. Look, I'll kill you to prove it." So it's frustrating when garbage like this is expressed by mainstream news sites, whether that be from people like whoever, whatever
What
person, whatever
guy.
person out there would want to express such horrible things. I'm definitely not a fan of them, and I have to say that I think they should take ownership of it.